Hey everybody, welcome back to Make the Space with Ashley. It's your girl Ash. Thank you again for tuning in for another episode. I'm so happy to have you here with us. Thank you again for all your support and love for the podcast. If you're not already following the podcast page on Instagram, it's Make the Space with Ashley on Instagram. Okay, there you can reach me personally if you're interested of being a guest on the show. Please shoot me a DM. I would love to connect with you. For today's episode, we have a very special guest and another Millersville University Marauder. We have Ethan Vaughn on the show. How are you, Ethan?
I'm doing well, doing great, and just living life one day at a time.
I hear that. That's the best. That's the most we can do. So Ethan is on the show to share a very, very special and inspirational story of his. Ethan is a walking miracle, and we're going to get more into that in a sec. But before we get started, Ethan, every time I have a guest on the show, I always do what I call a flex moment. It's basically your time to shine. A little bit more about yourself, outside of, what we're going to share with the listeners today. If you have any cool projects coming on or, any accomplishments recently, just share whatever you're comfortable with the listeners.
Let's see, I'm a native of Coastal Pennsylvania. I was born in Brandywine Hospital. I was enrolled in the school district of Coatesville area until 2001 when my mom decided to move to Lancaster. Accomplishments go, I graduated college twice, Harrisburg Area Community College, December 2017. I recently graduated from Millersville University, December 2020. I've been recognized by the School Board of Lancaster, recognized with a proclamation and declaration by Lancaster City Council. I've been recognized by Harrisburg Area Community College in a newsletter. And I've recently been recognized by Lancaster Community Television Station, LCTV, Channel 66, for an updated version as an inspirational story. And I also was interviewed by Dr. Johnny Vega. And I also was recently published in the front page of the Lancaster newspaper. The key quote is, "I did not give up." My Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok username is Ethan Poetic 23. I have a Facebook, I have a LinkedIn, and of course I have a YouTube channel, Ethan Poetic. Basically, I'm looked up into in the community by a lot of people, social media, and around the world. But at the same time, it's just, I come from humble beginnings from a single parent household where I didn't really have much of a father figure inside the household. But I learned to turn my adversities into my advantage. And in life, it's never easy. You have to be willing to go against the grain because, like, if your car starts breaking down, you have to get it fixed. Just like in life, when there's certain things that break down your foundation, you have to take care of that stuff on a priority level before it shows out into the world.
Very true words. Thank you for that. Congratulations on graduating. I know I congratulated you personally, but yes, Ethan graduated from Millersville University during the pandemic at that. So congratulations to you for finishing that during such a trying time. And I saw that, you were on the front page of the newspaper. So that big shout out for that. That's awesome. Great stuff you have going.
You're very welcome, and everything's backed up. It's on the internet, it's on social media, and I speak what I live, and I gotta back up what I say. That way, when it gets researched, I can pass the test of being challenged, negation, and from there, the proof is in the ink, and the proof is in the digital footprint I left. But it's also about leaving a legacy for the future generation and the current people who are living now.
Absolutely. And I do see, you have a lot of, interaction with the community, especially with the youth. And I do see that you're, really active in that respect. And you are, like you said, you are looked up to by many. You're very inspirational. And Ethan reached out to me because Ethan and I, we went to school together. We went and that's where we met. And we recently got reconnected with the podcast page on Instagram. And Ethan reached out and wanted to come on the show and share his story. And when I learned more about Ethan and his story and where he's at today, with the time that has passed since Millersville, since I was at Millersville, I was like, yes, please come on and share this. I think, especially during there's been a lot of negativity going on in the world, a lot of grieving happening. So I think it would be great to have such a feel good, inspirational story to tell. So I want to jump into it with you, Ethan. Take us back to, the day of your accident. Walk us through that whole accident. I'm sure it started out as a normal day, and just to paint a picture for listeners of what that day was like for you.
Basically, I was helping Jordan Steffi, the Children's Ever Chance Foundation, now rebranded to Otalo, at Media Heights Golf Tournament with the fundraising effort for selling Deuce Brand watches. There were two different groups, one for the morning, one for the afternoon. We exceeded the goal of raising the funding. Everyone had a great time. Pictures were being taken. And then I was left out with my aunt, her fiance, and two cousins. And then the last time I'll say bluntly, like, I had a concussion, so I don't remember the car accident wholeheartedly. Only thing I can do is just like imagine what happened, imagine what took place. But what ended up happening was, the last thing I remember seeing was the Hess gas station near the Olive Garden on Route 30 near the Rockville outlet. Then next thing you know, I wake up at the unit. Nobody's telling me what's happening. I got tubes in my stomach or chest, and I got IVs. I lost all this weight. The only piece of people I'm seeing is just nurses and staff. And then eventually, I end up seeing family members, and they finally tell me what happened. I was just devastated. But it's like a feeling where I can hear what's being said, but I was heavily medicated. Like, it was a sense of feeling where I can't tap into my emotions like somebody else would, because the injuries I suffered were so severe. They had to heavily medicate me. That way I can still function and be coherent in a way. Mm-hmm. But what happened was, after being in the hospital for at least a month, I ended up going to Langston Rehabilitation, which is on Good Drive. It's actually right across the street from the Women and Babies Hospital, and less than 2 minutes away from Park City Mall. I was there doing the rehab, physical, speech, occupational, and then took a turn for the worst where I ended up choking on a banana because it wouldn't go down. Then went to take a feeding test, and basically my larynx got paralyzed, so I ended up having emergency surgery to get put on a feeding tube. And the doctor first said maybe 8 months to a year. And I never been in that situation before. I can't eat or drink. But luckily, I continue to get second opinions every month to get my throat checked out to see if I'll pass a feeding test. And it took like 5 whole months of patience, being disciplined, and learning the consequences if I were to try to eat again. But ultimately, that day I finally started eating again was just the biggest breakthrough of my life. Started to weight, start eating again, and the next thing you know, people start wanting to take me out to eat. People start bringing food to the house, drinks. I'm talking about just good assorted beverages, not the alcoholic beverages. Mm-hmm. And then, it was just a day of celebration where all these people were coming out. I remember being at my house, being in the rehab, being in the hospital, where we were actually having Bible study there. I remember also just people showing up randomly, people calling the phone. But at the same time, life just wasn't the same. It's one thing to overcome the accident. It's quite another to recover from, or the physical stuff. And then eventually, the long journey to get my life back together.
Yes. So, tell me, other than, you had the paralyzed larynx and had a difficulty breathing, but you mentioned you had to go through speech therapy, physical therapy. What other injuries you sustained from this accident?
As I mentioned before, the concussion, a left black eye, my wrist kind of was sprained. Then I suffered a left fractured collarbone that I never got surgery on because since my larynx was like paralyzed, the doctors didn't want to take a risk. Then the biggest injury of everything, where I should have died, was my aorta got severed. I should have died within 3 to 5 minutes of internal bleeding, where, hey, I shouldn't be here. But I'll just say, based on what I can use in my imagination, basically cops, ambulance, fire department, EMT still cut the car in half and put me in the ambulance right away. And eventually made it to the Lancashire General Hospital. The Dr. Wartella showed up and did the emergency surgery. It was high risk. And basically I had a 99% chance of death versus 1% chance of living. And, it's just, the surgery was done, but the thing is, it was just a waiting time. It wasn't a waiting time like someone's waiting in maternity ward. They were waiting to see if I wake up. And when I woke up, I was in a legally high conscious state where, okay, I can talk to people, but I'm not aware of anything. I'm in a different how I say this politely. I'm in a different mind frame. I don't even remember the conversations I had with people on those days. But what ended up happening was the surgery was a successful one. And the woman who cried was so relieved. The doctor was amazed that surgery was a success. And then, family members were very relieved. My parents didn't have to bury me, set up funeral arrangements, create my obituary. What I can just say is, like I always tell people, it's not that I directed intentionally God, but it is God's work, because that's the only way I'm still here present.
Amen. Wow. And yes, the aorta, if for some of our listeners who are not familiar with the anatomy, I know that surgery is a very high risk surgery. I used to be an anesthesia technician in the OR dealing with a lot of cardiac, heart cases, aortic dissections. And the aorta, for those who may not know, is the main artery of the body, and it supplies oxygenated blood throughout and it passes right over the heart, and it's one of the biggest arteries in your body. And if that is severed, if it's erupted or anything, or dissected, it could be very deadly. You have a very short window for surgery, because now there's the force of the blood is pumping to split into layers of the artery wall, allowing the blood to leak in between the wall. Then it's a very high risk surgery. It's a very that's a very deadly. The fact that you had this high risk surgery and survived that, like, I am amazed, because I could tell you myself, being in the heart room dealing with ruptured aortas or aortic dissections, like, there has been times that people don't make it out of that. So you are 100% blessed. Absolutely. So you started to go through rehab and you started to eat again, what were some other things during this recovery period that started to come back to you, or maybe, something started to get a little easier, or perhaps, those periods where life may feel like it's going to go back to normal?
Basically, it was just a situation where I was able to start eating again, and it was just one of the best feelings ever to have weight being put on. And then one of the breakthroughs was I was going to, it was through Teen Haven where I was volunteering at. It was with the help of Jason McKinney, his wife Nicole McKinney, and Pastor Jose Jimenez, where they wanted me to go there and restore my faith and get used to being back to normal, being back to being a civilian. Because when you're in rehab and hospital and at my house for all that stretch of period, I missed out on so much.
Mm-hmm.
And part of missing out so much was basically I had an opportunity to go to college at Hack, had a job opportunity lined up, a few poetry performances lined up, but then all I got taken away because of a car accident. But what ended up happening was one day we was playing a game of football and some tag games, and I just thought, I just do this for Pete's sake, just to participate. I ended up being the fastest guy. So that's when I realized I got my athletic ability back, but I also learned there's more to me just being athletic. There's also areas where I grew and where I became so resistant to temptation. I became more disciplined to where I don't need to go to military school. I just know what it takes to overcome adversity when it comes to life situation. It's like for some people, they'll get caught up in the moment of freezing. For me, I react. And it's not something that was trained. It's just something that happened. It's just when you overcome death of any circumstances, your body's not the same. And when you do recover, your senses become more enlightening and fast reacting. And that's what ended up happening to me. It's something I didn't realize until I started playing football and the track and start readjusting to my life again. And one of the things that really took me out of my comfort zone was Jason McKinney. I enjoyed playing the video games and sports. I was on that high of like just glad to have some ability back. But what ended up happening was he wanted to give my testimony at Teen Haven camp, and I was kind of like hesitant, like I don't feel comfortable talking about something so dramatic, because I'm not the type of person that really shows that side where I'm gonna humiliate myself in order to like be exalted. I'm not gonna show that weak side or a side where, hey, I'm real with my emotions.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a situation where that's what I saw on one side. The other side was Jason saw, but he didn't tell me I can inspire people, and that's what ended up happening at that situation where, I kind of like around the campfire just blew everybody away because they had no idea and I didn't even look like it. And basically, I left out there a different person than I did coming in.
Mm-hmm.
The other breakthrough with Jason McKinney and his wife was getting my driver's license, and it was just an amazing feeling to finally, have that support of him and his wife, where they allowed me to use their car while I had my driving permit, and basically start practicing and putting in the work, and eventually I passed. Posted on social media. I thought I was just like 20 likes. I ended up getting over 300 likes on that picture and all these comments. People were so proud and everything else. And then from there, I ended up working for the Sports Lancaster, starting the sports programming with sports, football, basketball, track and field. And mind you, I used to attend Wheatland Middle School and J.P. McCaskey. I never knew I'd be working there. I had no idea or any clue that I'd be working at either location, even as a former student athlete there. The other breakthrough was just kids bringing me out of my comfort zone, where I would show up to work. I'm thinking this is my sanctuary. I can, relate to all the student athletes, talk to some of the families, but kids nowadays have cell phones, and basically they start Googling me, and then they show me their cell phone and say, "Is that you that was in the car accident?" I'm like, "Yeah, that is me." And I had to tell my boss about it, and he's like, "Ethan, you are inspiration, so you're gonna have to adjust to it because you're gonna have to live with this for the rest of your life."
Yeah.
And I realized I gotta do something, so I realized I can just turn things around to where I can, since I'm being looked up to, I can inspire, create these posters, and with the help of certain artists, and basically select a few student athletes at a time. And from there, we take pictures. I give them like a graduation card or thank you card, whatever. And then from there, post it on social media. And then, I did that partially because I wanted to change the narrative about the car accident, because prior to me being on the front page of the newspaper, that's all people knew about me. It's just a person that was in critical condition. But thanks to social media, I get to create my own narrative and tell my own story and tell more of the updated version. And that's when people really felt more inspired by everything. And then from there, it just took off. Jordan Steffi was also a big help as well, as far as it encouraged me. It's time to go back to what we set up beforehand, before the car accident. And I was able to get my transcripts for free from the school of Lancaster, enrolled at Hack, and the environment was just different. In high school, teachers can read the books to you. In college, you gotta read the books on your own. You want to kind of they'll put you out, and it's about money. And basically, you gotta take care of your business in college, because that's eventually what it comes down to. Because it's gonna be certain people you're gonna be outgrowing each semester.
Absolutely.
And then finally, just being able to be comfortable with talking about it, come a long way. And it helped me grow. And I also realized the quote of, when you start being uncomfortable with certain things and overcome them, you end up growing in your inner core. But I will admit, I don't want to be like the center of attention all the time. There's times where I want to be the person in the background. There's times where I want to be the person that's, I don't mind being here at the event, but I don't want to talk about everything right now, because there's a time and place for everything. And I set that boundary with certain people, because it's just like I show up at some place, and next thing you know, can you tell me what happened? Can you tell me this and that? I'm like, I just want to have lunch. I just want to enjoy life, not talk about this stuff, because there's a cost of me inspiring people. That's humility. There's being vulnerable to the deepest core, and that's something people don't understand, is that the people who inspire you the most are the people who are the most vulnerable, because they're pouring out their hearts. They're telling you the whole truth, but they're also telling you that this is what happened, but at the same time, this is what happened behind the scenes. And that's something people don't really realize as a whole, that they have to learn to see things differently and allow a person to have that time and place to want to share their story, and time and place to where, let's talk about this another time. Let's just enjoy life.
That you recognize that and you set those boundaries, that's very healthy. And it sounds like throughout this recovery journey, this healing journey, you've had many support systems, and that definitely, I would imagine, mental state. I'm sure many people who would go through something like this, it would really, affect their mental health, and it may have them in a very depressed state, along with your support system. I know you mentioned that. Is your faith something that helped you persevere through all this and not get discouraged throughout the healing journey?
I have to say yes, because I was on a lot of people's prayer lists when that car accident happened. I'm talking not just locally, statewide. And social media too. It's just people were just praying for the best because they didn't. A lot of people didn't want me going out like that as far as to a car accident, and people have to realize that death is a serious situation to face. Death is also when somebody's life ends, and when it's over, because once that coffin closes, that's it. You can't see that person no more. And I realized that people were praying for me so much that their prayers not only were answered, but what they asked for was beyond what they ever saw coming. And what people also realize is that prayer goes a long way. It's not something you pay for, like you pay for a cell phone bill or household bills. It's just more speaking verbally, or for some people have to do prayer in sign language with their hands, and also braille. And prayer has multiple ways of being communicated with in different languages, not just English. And mental health, I'm not on any drugs, I'm not an alcoholic, and I never turned to any addiction. It's just, I'm thankful of being part of not having no serious addiction where I turn to it just to cope or anything, because I've seen a lot of people who do come from certain situations where, life does happen. They end up turning to things that end up becoming a downfall. And eventually, they end up fighting their own health. And people have to understand that your mental health is key to your success in your relationships, marriages, businesses, and having a healthy environment. And again, like I said before, you have to address that stuff on a priority level, not put it off, because when you put it off, it's going to show up. And when it shows up, there's going to be people who see it, and there's some people who may judge and think, I didn't know that side of you before. I didn't know that trauma, pain, wound, or scar happened to you. But there's also some people who will be there and encourage you and pray. And you have to understand that not everything on social media and your personal life needs to be on there. Because before social media, you gotta have a conversation with somebody. And social media is not the place to put personal business out there, because you open the door for people to speak their opinions, not their solutions. And I say that because that stuff can be used against you when it comes to applying for a job, and the HR department finds that, like, oh, we can't hire that person, because if they're telling their personal life story out there that has nothing to do, that's encouraging or inspiring, they can tell something about the job that's going wrong. And that's something that people have to realize, that social media is not the place to confide in. Social media was originally designed for networking, but once Mark Zuckerberg started to expand his network and made it open to people besides college students, it took off. And mental health is key towards health, because when you start taking care of your mental health on a priority level and start evolving the way you eat, drink, you'll live longer in life. And I say that because my grandma lived to her late 90s because she was eating healthy food, not fast food. Because the reason why some of these kids act up is because the fast food and all these foods that have and food coloring, that stuff comes at a cost, and that's why some of these kids are not able to focus in class, the Zoom meeting. Because back in the day, food was more organic, and people could be more dialed into conversations and comprehend. And last but not least, you have to do all to face the music of your own choices, good, bad, and ugly, and learn from them, not repeat them, because the people you're around the most is who you're likely to come and who you affect the most. And once you start showing people your crowd, that's when your future is going to be known. And in some situations, you can be close to a bad crowd, but you also have the choice to leave the bad crowd because no one's forcing you to be there. No one's grabbing you by the hand. You have a choice as willingly to decide whether your mental health wants to get better for the future or for better or for worse. Because the reason why some people have delays in life because they're not taking care of their mental health. And when you have so many delays in life, the things you should have done years ago, you're not doing later, it shows you're not using up a certain amount of your years to do something you should have done much sooner. But when it keeps being put on the back burner instead of priority level, it's going to show it has tremendous effects. But it's better to cross the finish line than not. In my situation, I had delays from being raised in a single parent household, and I've seen people make some bad decisions. Not that I'm blaming, but I will say I didn't let it define me because I saw a whole other life where there are people who are successful celebrities who come from the same environment I came from and overcame the same things. And there's plenty of books to read in the library that shows how to overcome adversity and improve your mental health. But you must be willing to face the music of their choices and do what's best for the long term, not the short term.
Right. Yes. The mental health journey, it takes a lot of self work, and it's not linear. And and it does require a lot of resources as well. Like yourself, you have a great support system. For some people, their mental health journey also, their support system is their faith, their relationship with God, which you have as well. Prayer, for believers is a big key in the mental health journey as if you are a believer, which I am as well, it does work. And it could be, that in itself could be very helpful, very therapeutic as well in the mental health journey. So I'm glad that, with your healing journey, you were able to stay mentally well throughout all your adversities. So it's right since the accident.
Yes, 10 years. And at first I didn't think much of it until Jordan, sent me a message on Facebook and said he wanted to speak to me in person. And this is during a time where I was in the home stretch of college where I was in my internship at Lancaster Community Television Station Channel 66, and also taking my final class at Mosby University, which was a math class. Basically, just tell me the importance of a 10-year anniversary, and I started looking at things differently. Like, I have come a long way. I have broken a lot of paths for myself. I have inspired a lot of people, and things start happening. Like, once I graduated college, filled out the application for graduation, and then start sharing a different part of my life more on social media as far as, as I cross the finish line. And then eventually I ended up getting recognized by School Board of Lancaster. I basically sat in the meeting, told them what I overcame, showed them my college degree, and I got a round of applause, took a picture with Dr. Rao, and then they sent a letter to me. And then I knew most of the city council members, including the mayor. And then I also knew Janet Diaz, Jamie Arroyo, and several other people. And they all voted to do a proclamation of declaration for me. The key part of that was Janet Diaz, where I knew her before she became a council member. I talked to her on the phone, and she was more than welcome to get things started and be consistent on it. And once I was on that Zoom meeting I waited about 2 hours after they going through all their general stuff. But they all were inspired and voted yes, as in saying I. 3 weeks later, I get the special letter. Then after that, I get recognized by Harrisburg Area Community College, where I was on LinkedIn, contacted somebody who ended up sending me to one of the writers, and with one of the writers, I ended up doing a Zoom meeting with them. And then the biggest one of them all was being featured on the Lancaster newspaper, where I was at a Chester basketball game down in Delaware County. Chester had just won the boys 5A District 1 championship. And then basically I get a text from John Walk saying he wanted to interview. I thought the text was fake because I've been getting some people texting me and, bogus things. Well, when I looked at it twice, I realized, it is legit. And I texted him and said, yes. We had a conversation a few days later, just a pre-talk. And then once he came to the Talo office, we took some pictures there. And that was the most intense interview ever for 2 hours. We went from talking about what my life was like in Coatesville, single-parent household, to the transition of leaving Coatesville in the middle of my 8th grade years for Lancaster, where I transferred to Wheatland Middle School. I was still able to do sports up here my freshman year, but unfortunately I wasn't able to do my 3 years of varsity, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade year, because prior to me moving to Lancaster, my mom had my little sister, and she was getting ready to start pre-K, and younger brothers just wasn't old enough to pick her up from the bus station, and I'm the only, teenager, so I had to sacrifice 3 years of that just to pick up my sister from the bus stop, because if I didn't, well, that's when Children Youth Services gets involved, and unfortunately, I had to do something that a real man's supposed to do. So I was kind of forced to grow up fast. And what people have to understand is that when it comes to child care and picking your child up at bus stops when they need to be, that's a priority. And that's something I always remember, but it also allowed me to learn that I was being selfless, but it was a choice that got put on me because my mom didn't hire a babysitter and didn't trust any of the neighbors to get the job done. But ultimately, things worked its way out many years later, where I did graduate from college twice, and I got featured in the front of the Lancaster newspaper. And John Walk, I give him a special shout out for, allowing me to be on the front page and send the photographer out to my job, where it was a scrimmage, JP McCaskey versus Coatesville at Lancaster. And then the other opportunity was this. When I was living in Coatesville, I used to live right across the street, right next to the high school campus of Coatesville Area Senior High School. And I never knew in all my years that I'd be working at that track and field, because Coach Damian Henry, he requested my help to do the girls' varsity long and triple jump. Now, I did get compensated for that, and that was just an amazing experience that I was able to work back in the place I used to live and grew up in.
Yeah, it's like everything came full circle, and I'm really glad that, you got to recognize, 10 years post the accident you are now, that is a win that should be celebrated, because, as prior, there was a very, very low chance of you making it out of this, especially with that aorta injury. So, we're 10 years now since the accident. You have told us all so much, all the achievements that you have, under your belt. So Ethan see himself 10 years from today.
Hopefully I get my career started in television, be an anchor, sports anchor, continue to do the interviews, and be my own producer. Because I know how to deliver, the story, but also get to the point and allow someone to feel comfortable, and always give them a thank you card. That way it shows appreciation for their time and well-being. Be a homeowner where I have the independence to have a place where I call my own. And hopefully I can settle down with the right woman that sees me as more than a friend, where it's just I can get the first date, the second date, the third date, and then transition to a serious or long-term relationship, because behind a great man is a woman that's the backbone, the supporting person. But also understand every relationship is different, because life happens and people change over time. And there was this quote I learned about relationships, about the type of woman you date. And the quote simply says, if you choose a working woman, you have to accept that she can't handle the full household duties all the time. If you choose a housewife who can take care of you and manage the home completely, you need to accept that she doesn't make money. If you choose a submissive woman, you must accept that she depends on you. If you choose to be with a brave woman, you must accept that she is tough and has her own thoughts. If you choose a beautiful woman, you have to accept the expenses that come with it. If you choose to be with a great woman, you must accept that she is tough and firm. No woman is perfect. A woman has her own good thing that defines who she is and makes her unique. End quote.
That is absolutely true. So, ladies, Ethan is single. So, if there's anyone out there listening that is interested, you could slide in his DMs, perhaps, maybe. um, so that's great stuff, and I definitely see you having all of that 10 years from now. You have so much already. 10 years since the accident. You're going to continue receiving blessings on blessings, my friend. Last thing before we wrap up, if someone's listening to this right now and they're going through, it doesn't have to be similarly to yours where they, experience an accident. But if anyone's listening and they're having any type of struggle, any sort of adversity, and they're having a hard time, breaking through that, continuing on, what advice would you give to that person?
First, you have to really look at the truth for what it is, because every situation has a who, what, when, where, and why. And you have to have a serious conversation with yourself, like how far you want to go to heal yourself, take yourself to the next level. And I learned this quote: if you focus on the hurt, you will continue to suffer. If you focus on the lesson, you will continue to grow. And what I learned in my situation is that I could have focused on the hurt. I could have focused on everything I lost. But eventually, you gotta go from being the victim to the victor. And you have to have that courage to really go out your way to transfer your mind, because not everyone's going to be for you that's in your life that wants you to overcome things. Because there's some people who didn't understand that I was destined to overcome the things, but you also have to realize that in life, challenges are going to happen. Even challenges happen to the most successful person, the most good-hearted person as well. And challenges are meant to grow. Some of those challenges are meant to be lessons. But I also realize there's some situations where some people are, have some deep issues that need to be addressed. And, I've seen situations where some people have alcohol addictions and other addictions, and certain family members have to call an intervention and give an ultimatum: you get the help you need, or we're going to distance ourselves from you. And that's when life has its choice in that teachable moment. But I understand that everyone has their story, but everyone gets to choose to be the victim or the victor, and no one's perfect, but there's always room for improvement. Like car, we can see a BMW, a Rolls Royce, or a Ford pickup. They may drive smooth, but they always need maintenance, gas, insurance, registration, and that monthly payment, whether it's a lease or finance. But part of that maintenance for that car is making sure the brakes are good, oil changes, and keeping the car clean. Same thing with life. You have to do maintenance on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the difference between you keep going and going, and you can avoid certain detours, you can avoid certain delays, and eventually you'll come to a place in life where you actually do find peace. You do find yourself being more than what you were destined to be. Because in my situation, I wasn't expected to go to college when I wasn't learning support classes. I was targeted because, hey, I come from a single parent household. Me and my siblings got different dads. We're on the welfare, you name it. Our fathers are absent. And when I looked at all my files from elementary to high school, there was no mention of going to college, further education, such as take dual enrollment classes, honor classes, STEM, any of that stuff. Well, I see people's expectations in the education world, and it goes to show that not everything that's being taught or said in a public school or private school setting is true. Because what I can tell you is that I knew that there was more life for me than just being in a learning support class, even though I was targeted. Because back in the day, during the time period where my aunts and uncles grew up, they were schoolhouse learning, and this is before the state funding came in, and it was focused on financial literacy, getting your trades, your certifications. That way, you didn't technically have to go to college, but you'll be making an honest living and become part of the middle class, working class, and blue collar class. But once that state funding came in, it became all these strings attached. So basically, the state will say, if this school district wants this learning support money, you got to target certain students to meet a certain demographic. And they chose me for a reason. But at the same time, I knew I was destined for something, because I'm the smartest guy in the math class, smartest guy in all the other classes. But I realized, looking back now, it's just the biggest reason why I was in that class, because my father never showed up at any of the parent-teacher conferences or IEP meetings. Now, I will admit, my parents were never together. And what I realized is that without a man's presence showing up, that has a big influence. And as a result, there's a lot of things in my life I did without him. And what I tell other people is that, because you come from a single parent household or your biological parent wasn't there, you still got to run your race. Because as an adult, you have to keep moving forward. Because the person who's supposed to do it is not doing it on a priority. They're putting it on the back burner and gonna have all these denials. It's like, basically, they don't want you to outgrow them. And what I can tell you is that I've outgrown a lot of family members, and it wasn't by someone giving things to me. So I worked and earned for everything I ever have. Nothing was given to me. An opportunity was given to me, but I still had to put in the work, just like anybody else who's getting ready to cross the finish line at Millsville University, where we're going to finally have a commencement ceremony the 6th of May, and I look forward to that. But overall, people have to understand that you choose the story to your legacy. You choose the life you want to live. Because you have to be willing to be like a tree that grows with branches. You have to be willing to transfer from being the caterpillar to a butterfly, where you can spread your wings and fly. because in life you don't want to look back on your life like there's so many opportunities you missed out on, but didn't have the courage to step up to the plate. And believe me, there's people that are always going to be in your corner for you to grow. But overall, you have to be willing to see yourself beyond your circumstances, because there's people in prison who are about to get out who see themselves beyond their circumstances. There's people who are maybe homeless, who end up in a shelter, see themselves or get encouraged to see themselves beyond their circumstances. And that's my advice. And to check me out, you can check me out on YouTube, Ethan Poetic. My TikTok, Snapchat, and Instagram username is Ethan Poetic 23. I have a Facebook, and I have a LinkedIn, and my email is Ethan, ethanb16@gmail.com.
All right. Well, I really like the analogy with the car. You had a lot of good analogies there. And one thing that stuck out to me, you said, was, being not the victim, but the victor. I really like how you said that. So thank you for that. Ethan, I want to thank you again for coming on the show. I appreciate you reaching out to me and your willingness to be vulnerable here on the show and tell your story. And I'm looking forward to with you in the future. If you ever want to be a guest on the show, or if there's anything that you would like to work on together, anything that I can do, for you to help you, in the communications realm, because like you, I have a degree in communications as well. So, if you ever need, a friend, reach out to me. Don't hesitate. All right.
Yeah, but I also have to make sure reciprocal that I help you out as well, because.
I really appreciate that.
Because I don't want to be the taker, but not be the giver at the same time. So there has to be balance. It's
of course.
Here's my analogy about a car. In order for the car to go forward, the tires have to be balanced. Yeah, just like in any, helping someone, there has to be give and take. It can't just be one side, because if it comes one side, someone's gonna feel used and appreciated. And eventually their phone calls and texts are not gonna be answered as fast.
Right. Well, I know for a fact I will not have that problem with you. We go way back, and I'm really glad that we got to reconnect over Instagram and do the show and share your story. So I really appreciate you, Ethan. I know my listeners are gonna really appreciate you. And yeah, I'm just so happy to have this opportunity with you tonight. For coming on, Ethan. Again, follow YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, all that good stuff. All right. If you missed all that information, run it back and catch all that, and make sure to follow Ethan as well on Instagram. So this is Make the Space with Ashley. Follow us on Instagram at Make the Space with Ashley. And thank you for tuning in for another episode, everyone. And God bless.